Hello, everyone. My name is John Lipman, and I am the director of Maharishi Vastu Services in North America. And we have built Vastu buildings for hundreds and hundreds of people across North America, totaling close to $500 million worth of Vastu buildings. If you were not hearing me during the first 3 minutes of this chat, we've just fixed a setting, and so we're going to start over, and so don't feel that you've missed anything. We have been building, MaharshiVastu.org has been building Vastu buildings exclusively for about 20 years. We are not generally ourselves a developer, but we often work with developers to build Vastu communities. And right now we are working with developers to build Vastu communities in New Jersey. And so the purpose of this call is to speak to you in the New Jersey area and to bring you up to date on our plans to build Vastu communities. And we are speaking mainly to Indo-Americans because people who have come to the United States from India, the land of the Ved, have an automatic awareness and generally appreciation of the power of this, which is natural law-based architecture, which can bring good health and happiness and family harmony, success and growth to enlightenment to families merely by living in homes that are designed according to natural law, and even more so to live in entire communities. And we have built Vastu communities in different locations in the United States, and our plan now is to build some in New Jersey. And so those of you who are interested, welcome to this video chat. And I will, first of all, introduce you to the effects of Vastu. And next, which might be very interesting to you, I will share with you medical and scientific research, because it turns out that it is quite easy to verify statistically and medically some of the benefits of Vastu. It is not just superstition. It is not just an ancient custom passed down in India, but rather it is very real and a benefit to anyone, completely independent of belief. And so I'll share that medical and scientific research with you also. And there's only so much that you can learn about Vastu by hearing someone talk about it. It's the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. And so one of our clients who owns a beautiful Vastu home in the metropolitan New York area has agreed to open their home on the afternoon of June 21st in Westchester County. And so those of you who would like to go on a tour of that large, beautiful Maharishi Vastu home in New Bedford, just click on the link at the bottom of this screen and register, and then we will give you the detailed information for where to go on the afternoon of June 21st so that you can tour a Maharishi Vastu home. We have quite a few surrounding metropolitan New York and surrounding New Jersey, and I'll show you photographs of some of them, including this one. And also, if you may not be able to go there on June 21st, but you'd like to go to a future home tour, which we anticipate, if you'd like more information that I haven't covered, or if you would like to talk to us privately about a project that you would like, then just also click on that link and register and let us know what you're interested in, and we'll be in touch with you. Those of you who want to ask me questions, there's a chat feature. And if you click on it and you text a question, then these questions will be assembled for me. And at the end of the talk, I will do my best to answer all of the questions that I have not already answered. So feel free to text in questions, and just know that I'm going to answer all of them at the end. So what is Vastu? And I'm going to share some images with you. as I talk about it. Well, what I practice is we call Maharishi Vastu architecture. And this is in honor of His Holiness Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who is well known in the United States and around the world for bringing out meditation, transcendental meditation, as well as Hatha Yoga and Ayurveda. But he also, in later years, brought out the technology of Vastu to the world. Now, Maharishi was himself perhaps the closest disciple of the Shankaracharya Nagar, Brahmananda Saraswati Jagadguru Jyotirmaya. And so we're really representing this very pure ancient tradition from India. And what Maharshi found when he examined the tradition of Vastu as it is being practiced in the United States is that, as he examined how Vastu was being practiced in India, is that it didn't seem to be completely intact in any of the ancient traditions of Vastu as they have survived in different parts of India. And so he undertook a research project in which he met with, at great length, and talked to Stapatis from the different Vedic traditions in different parts of India, and went over the Vedic literature with them, and with his own status as a Maharishi, working with them, was able to resolve the conflicts between the different Vastu traditions in different parts of India, and to establish a practice of Vastu that is really completely effective, that is everything that the Vedic literature says that Vastu is. And the literature, as I mentioned, tells us that if we build a house in accord with natural law, that we will have, living in it will have an influence on us of promoting good health and happiness and family harmony, prosperity, growth to enlightenment, all really wonderful things. And in fact, we can even say that a Vastu house is a generator of pure consciousness, of Purusha, of silence. In living in a Vastu house, we're really being aligned with the cosmos. That's what Vedic architecture is. And how can it do this? How can just a building have this kind of profound effect upon life? And is it real, or is it just a matter of superstition, of ancient custom? Well, there has been wonderful medical and scientific research done over the last 20 years that I will share with you in the course of this talk, so that what we'll be able to conclude is that the promises of the Shastras about the effects of living in natural law-based buildings is very real. And it is something that we can have in our own lives. So let's talk first of all about what Vastu is. The word Vastu means a structure that's in balance and harmony, a structure that has an influence of balance and harmony. And by custom in India, if you can apply those principles, which inherently are the principles of any structure in nature, of galaxies, of solar systems, of human physiology, of cells and molecules and atoms, if you can apply those same balancing and harmonizing influences of natural law to one of the structures that we create, to a building or to a city, then you can live life inside of it in harmony with nature, in harmony with natural law, and have nourishing benefits, you and your family. And it's a huge thing because we live 90 or 99% of our lives inside of buildings and inside of cities. And every architect knows that buildings and cities have enormous influences on the lives of the people in them, some for better, some for worse. Why not have only nourishing influences? And so that's the promise of Vastu. Now, the question is, how can it be that a building has an influence upon us? Because while architects know that buildings do, and some very perceptive people do also, others have never stopped to think about this. Well, what we understand from the Vedic literature is that a Vastu building is a building that's in harmony with natural law. And what is the most powerful influence of natural law on the surface of the earth? Well, it's the sun. The sun passes overhead from east to west, and it has different qualities of energy over the course of its travel overhead and below us. And we experience the effects of these different qualities of natural law. If we take a walk in sunrise, it's very nourishing. It gives us a really good start for the day. We're fresh and alert all day. We know that the midday sun has an influence, very intense influence on us, and that the setting sun has an influence of decline. Well, there are many additional influences of the sun's energy at different times of the day. And these are known and used in the texts of Vastu, which are also known as Sthapaja Veda, that limb of the Vedas that has to do with establishing structures according to natural law. And because the sun has different qualities of energy, life has evolved on this planet with a sensitivity to our orientation relative to the direction from which the sun rises, that is the east. And so quite a bit of research has established a very, very interesting thing. And I'm switching over now to a slide again, and it takes a couple of seconds whenever I do that, but we're going to see a slide now. And this is a slide of the brain, the skull, and at the very center is the thalamus. The thalamus is a really interesting organ of human physiology. It's one of the most important. It is a kind of link between the brain, the higher brain, and the brain stem and the rest of the physiology. Information that's transmitted between the brain and the rest of the body has to pass through the thalamus. And it turns out a lot of medical research has determined that the neurons in the thalamus are transmitting information at different rates when we are facing different directions. In lab research, if a lab animal is facing one direction, then certain neurons in the thalamus are transmitting information completely freely. And if they turn away from that direction, those neurons gradually turn off and don't transmit any information at all when they're facing 180 degrees away. And so it turns out that we are orientation sensitive machines. All higher life is. What a shocking thing. Well, that could only have evolved if there are different influences on us when we're facing different directions, which of course is the information which is contained in the Vedic literature. And so what is the single thing that we do in which we spend the most time every day facing in one direction, if direction really matters? Well, it's sleep. About a third of the day we spend pointing in one direction. So it is not surprising that the Vedic literature, Shastra, has recommendations to us for what direction to sleep. And everyone from India, almost everyone, knows because their parents or their grandparents told them, never sleep with your feet to the south. That is, never sleep with your head to the north, with the pillow end of the bed to the north. And this research has been validated. This ancient, we could think, superstition has been validated by medical science. In a pilot study, a very fine professor of neurophysiology and medicine discovered that if lab animals are made to sleep with their heads to the north, they have lowered levels of stress hormones in their bloodstream that are rather raised levels of stress hormones. And higher levels of stress hormones mean that the organs of the body have to work harder, which means that something in the environment is such that we have evolved to be under stress when we're sleeping and our head is to the north. And so our organs have to work harder. Now, if they have to work harder for long periods of time, they are going to fail sooner. And that's not at all good for our health. What's the best direction to sleep? Head to the east, pillow to the east. And in that same piece of research, the neurophysiologists found that animals who are made to sleep with their heads to the east have reduced levels of stress hormones in their bloodstream. and then when they're awakened display peaceful qualities of interaction, whereas animals made to sleep with their heads to the north fight with each other the next day. So this seems to be a very real thing. And then the question is, does this transfer over to us, to human beings? And the answer is yes, it does. In a piece of research that was a very fine study that was published in a good peer-reviewed medical journal, a physician in the Midwestern United States discovered that among her patients, those who happened at home to have their beds facing north, pillows to the north, have the worst mental health. Those people who sleep with their head to the north suffer from the most depression and anxiety. So we should sleep with our heads to the east, or second choice, head to the south, but never with head to the west or head to the north. Just as your parents or grandparents, if you're from India, told you. This is borne out by medical research. And it gives us a reason to really take seriously the ancient knowledge of Vastu, of Stapatya Veda. And so let's look at more of the recommendations from the Vedic literature. When we design a Vastu house, and that's all that I've been doing for 20 years. I am not from India, but when I was just 18, over 40 years ago, I learned to meditate as transcendental meditation as taught by Maharishi Vastu. And meditation was a wonderful thing for me, and I have meditated twice a day, virtually every day, for the last 45 years of my life. And I gradually added to that doing yoga asanas and pranayam and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Maharshi's yogic flying. I do Abhyanga every morning. And so really, even though I live in the West, I have gradually adopted many elements of the Vedic lifestyle. And so as an architect, I was galvanized, I was thrilled, I was very excited when I heard that Maharshi was reviving, was bringing out this ancient Vedic knowledge of architecture that could connect us to cosmic intelligence. And so when I had an opportunity to apprentice 20 years ago, to begin to learn these principles, I abandoned my previous architectural practice, which had given me national fame, and submerged myself only in this because I knew that the most good that I could do for the world as an architect would be to practice Vedic architecture. And so in sharing that with you now, when we design Vastu homes, and it's either as custom homes or homes that are in our portfolio of pre-designs, or in homes that we cooperate with developers and they build for people in different parts of the United States or the world, we always design them so that the bedrooms can have the beds facing east or facing south, and other things, the direction we face when we dine, when we're working, when we're studying, all have influences upon brain coherence. And so we design houses to promote maximum brain coherence by putting rooms properly designed. But there are many, many more elements of natural law-based architecture, a proper Vastu design. And so let's look at a couple more of them. Here is a chart showing the effects of facing different directions, of the house facing different directions. Because as anyone who is familiar with Vastu knows, the direction your house faces has the biggest influence of all upon the quality of your life, bigger than anything else about the house. And as this chart shows, a house that faces east is the most nourishing. It has an influence of enlightenment, affluence, and fulfillment. And a house facing north also has good influences of prosperity and happiness. The other directions, well, we don't really want to think about them. They all have various negative effects, and a south-facing house has the most negative effect of all. All negative influences happen to us when we live in south-facing houses. And so when we design Vastu houses according to the system as it has been revived by Maharshi. We design only east or north-facing houses. So the question is this superstition or is this real? And it turns out that it's quite easy to measure the effect of an east-facing house as compared to a south-facing house, the very worst. There have been 4 studies done to date. 3 of them have been published in good peer-reviewed medical journals. The 4th is a pilot study, but it was still very robust and with a large population conducted by a good physician. And in the first of those studies, what was discovered is that people who live in south-facing houses have the worst mental health, have the most depression and anxiety. In the second study, it was learned that people who live in south-facing houses are much more likely to be under the care of a cardiologist, that is, to have a heart problem. In the third study, it was learned that people who live in south-facing houses are the least prosperous, make the least money. And finally, and most surprising at all, it was found that people who live in south-facing houses are burglarized much more often. And so we see that in our mental health, in our physical health, in our success in the world, and even in our interactions with the world, that the direction that our house faces has a real impact upon the quality of our lives. And it has an impact as predicted by the Vedic literature, Vastu Shastra. And so we should take this seriously. We should live in a house that faces due east or due north. And in the communities that we are planning to build in New Jersey, all houses will face east or north. But there is much more. There are many more qualities, elements of a house and its site that also have an influence on us. And let's take a look at one more of them right now. It is where different activities take place in different parts in the house. Because the sun has different qualities of energy at different times of the day, we want to align our primary activities in the house, in the part of the house where the appropriate one of the sun's differing energies will support that activity. So for instance, we want to dine where digestion will be heightened, so we digest our food best. We want to put a living room where conviviality is promoted. If we have a study or a library, we want to put it where our mind will be focused. And if we meditate at home, we want to put our meditation room where the quality of transcendence is promoted. Then natural law will support our activities. And in this diagram, we see a few of the most key primary ideal locations for activities. I should tell you that there are secondary choices for most of these, and consequently, you can build a real natural law-based house, and it can have any one of an almost infinite number of floor plans. But these principles that I show are each very real and are incorporated into Vastu homes. Other things that have an influence, in addition to the orientation of a building and the placement of a room, are the proportions and measurements of a building. In nature, we see again and again in such things as feathers, as leaves, as seashells, as eggs, as human physiology, in the beautiful structures of nature, we see proportions and measurements recur. And this is because divine intelligence, cosmic intelligence, uses certain formulas to replicate the intelligence at the basis of nature, unmanifest intelligence, out into the physical world. And we can use the proportions and measurements of nature to create an influence of balance and harmony in a humanly made structure. Another thing that has an influence is the materials of which a house is made. And this is so well known that in the West, about 40 years ago, was coined the term sick building syndrome. And sick building syndrome refers to not to sick buildings, but to the fact that people sometimes get sick from living or working in buildings that are outgassing toxic chemicals produced by synthetic materials of which the building is made. and which is too tight and therefore does not admit enough fresh air to purge those chemicals from the indoor air environment. The solution is very simple. Build of natural materials, build of non-toxic materials, have cross ventilation in your rooms, windows that operate, and get plenty of sunlight in. Every architect knows these are important things to do, and yet if we do not have them as part of our agenda, we may not do them, but we must. Another thing, in the very first talk that I heard Maharshi give on the subject of Vastu or Sthapatya Ved in the 1980s, he urged us to get our energy directly from the sun. He urged us to use photovoltaic panels to generate electricity right at the house, rather than to get our energy from perhaps coal-fired electric plants that might be hundreds of miles away. And it's really wonderful that today, 30 years after he gave that talk, photovoltaic electric panels have become very, very economical. And it is now very easy matter, very economical to build a house that gets as much energy directly from the sun through PV panels as it uses every year. I myself am building my third Maharishi Vastu house this year, and it will be powered completely from the power of the sun. Other things that have influences are things around us, qualities of the site. The direction in which the site slopes has a real influence. What would you think if someone wanted to build a house on a site that had a hill to the east of it? If someone came to us, to our consultation service at maharishivastu.org and said, can you design me a Vastu house on a site that has a hill to the east? We would say to them, no, we won't. We won't design a house on that lot. And why? Because that hill to the east would block that nourishing influence of the rising sun. The influence from the rising sun, the influence at the time of dawn, is all nourishing. It's good for our health. It's good for brain coherence, and we must not compromise that. There are other qualities in the site, in addition to slope, that also have an influence. For instance, the location of water bodies and other things. And so what we always ask people to do first when they want to consult with us on the design of a building, a house, or on the design of a community, if they are a developer, is come to us before they bought the land. And then we will give them some guidelines to help them to pick out what is likely to be a nourishing lot. And then if they send us the address, we will evaluate it remotely using information we can get from Google Earth, and then advise them whether those influences that we can evaluate from Google Earth are all nourishing. And we have them inspect some other qualities of the site. And between those, we can give people a firm guideline whether to buy the lot or not buy the lot. So enough words, let's have a look. Let's see what a Maharishi Vastu house or larger building might look like. I'm going to give you a tour around the world very, very quickly right now to look at some buildings that we built over the last 20 years. First of all, here is a complex of buildings that we built in Japan. And you will notice that this is a very traditional Japanese building. It has the shapes of traditional Japanese structures, and it's also built of the traditional materials and details of Japanese construction. Vastu is compatible with the styles of any part of the world. It is not a style, it is something deeper than that, which can be applied to virtually any style. Here's a very modern, contemporary house that was built 4 years ago in Australia. And it's also Maharishi Vastu house. Here are a sample of the 224 schools and 5 college campuses that we have built using the technology of Maharishi Vastu architecture in India, the land of the Ved, in which we are operating universities and schools that teach and use Vedic knowledge as the basis of their curricula. And these are all in the style of a traditional Vastu building, because that is appropriate for a school in India, the land of the Ved. Here's a house in Spain. This looks like it could be 400 years old, but this is a contemporary building, recently built in Spain, according to the principles of Vastu, but using the materials and the style and the colors of traditional homes of Spain. Here is a house that's not quite finished yet in South Africa, a wonderful Maharishi Vastu home. Here are a couple of close-up views of a house in Brazil. There's a high wall around this house, and that's very close to it, so we were not able to get a photograph of the entire house. We have on the left the inside and on the right the outside. A very contemporary house in the Brazilian style. Here is a private residence in Iowa, very grand, traditional Georgian revival house, perfect Maharishi Vastu. Here is a house in Bedford, New York. It's actually in Bedford Hills, and this is the house that will be open for the tour on June 21st. And those of you who may have joined late to this call who would like to be able to tour this house on the afternoon of June 21st, simply go to the bottom of the screen and click on the register link and give us your contact information, and we'll give you the address of this house so that you can go on that tour. And here are a couple of photographs of the interior of this house. It's a very elegant, refined home. And another Maharishi Vastu house that we will have on another house tour later this year is in Westport, near Westport, Connecticut. And it was on the cover of Westport magazine, and here is a photograph of the brownstone of the center of this home. Here's a house that I designed, which was built in Lincoln, Massachusetts. And it is designed in a very traditional style. It's a federal style house, as is appropriate because it's in a very historic neighborhood. This is a house that we built in Peterborough, New Hampshire. And it is, again, in a very classic, traditional New England style. We work with builders all over the United States. We guide them. We will give them the design principles. We, if necessary, will give them a complete floor plan. Otherwise, if someone is working with a local architect or designer on a house or a community and they want to use them, then we will consult with them on the design of the house or the city so that it will contain all Vastu principles in it. And that's how this one was designed. And let's look at some larger buildings now. This is a 9-story office building in Rockville, Maryland, just north of Washington, D.C., which is perfect Maharishi Vastu. It is designed to the standard of LEED Platinum, which is the highest measurement of energy efficiency and sustainability in the dominant ranking system for sustainability in the United States. And here is a close-up detail of a bit of the exterior. Here is a view of the lobby. It's a very regal building, Class A office space. And here's a look at one of the secretarial pools in the building. And though you can't tell in this photograph, every desk faces east and north. The desk faces east, the sideboard faces north. And this assures that everybody who works in this building has maximum brain coherence for maximum mental clarity, maximum efficiency in their business endeavors, and maximum physical and mental health, and plenty of sunlight. This is a family weekend retreat. Many people who live in Manhattan who want to live in Vastu have decided that it's virtually impossible to build Vastu in Manhattan. The grid of the streets of Manhattan do not align with the cardinal directions. They're off by about 15 degrees. And if you don't build a house that faces due east or due north true, then you don't get the benefits. And this is because the Earth rotates on its north and south poles. It rotates from west to east. The sun rises in the east, it sets in the west. And the whole force of natural law, cosmic law, comes at us from the east. And if our houses directly face this direction, then when we live in that house, we are in the flow of natural law. That's not possible on Manhattan. And so in this case, this family, the husband is very successful in Wall Street, decided to build first of all, they left Manhattan and they live in an east-facing condo right across the Hudson River. and he has a short ferry ride to his work near Wall Street. But they now spend 3 or 4 days a week, just an hour and a half or 2 hours away from Manhattan, where they built a weekend compound of 4 Maharishi Vastu buildings, where they are able to live now over half of their life. And this is a solution for some of the people who are tied to Manhattan. So this is the barn and garage that they built first, and here's a close-up view of it. They lived in it while they built their house. The house is still under construction, but here is a late construction photo of it. And here is another Maharishi Vastu outbuilding that they built on the property. Many people don't want to build a house. They would like to just live in an apartment building. And so indeed, we have built many Vastu apartment buildings. And here's a rendering of one that we are building in Europe right now. Here is a cancer center, a cancer treatment center in California that we built, that we were the Vastu consultants for. And this building has brought enormous good fortune to the operation. And the doctor who runs this cancer center believes with all of his might that he is getting better outcomes, that treatments are more successful since they have moved into a Vastu building. And he has found that his patients, who normally, because they always typically get nausea when they get treated for cancer, and eventually therefore develop a visceral repulsion from the building where they get treated. This is just something that's known as a phenomenon in the cancer universe. He discovered that when they had moved into this building, within months, his patients who were in between treatments were visiting the building unrequested because they felt so good in this building. So he saw the most dramatic turnaround from practicing cancer treatment in a Vastu building, that he then quickly built a Maharishi Vastu home for his family. And he had a son who at the time was 10 years old, who had been very fearful and who could not spend the night sleeping alone in his own bedroom. And from the very first night that they moved into their Maharishi Vastu home, their son lost his fear and was very comfortable sleeping at home in his own bedroom. And here's the entrance of the court entering this building. Here is a rendering of a large Maharishi Vastu building. This is in our portfolio of designs. We have floor plans of many houses in our portfolio. And most of the houses that we build today are just selected from the portfolio by clients or by developers. We have about 100 houses in the portfolio now. This is a house that we built for an Indo-American couple in Cincinnati. And it's built around a courtyard. Here's a view of the court. We built some houses in a very Vedic style, as was appropriate for some clients. And here is one, and here is another. And in India, we built entire campuses of Vedic buildings. Here is a campus for pundits in Madhya Pradesh that we built. We have built communities. Here is an entire university campus that we have built. As you can see in this photograph, every building faces the same direction, faces east. This is Maharshi University of Management in Fairfield, Iowa, which has been completely reconstructed according to the principles of Vastu. And here are a few of the Vastu buildings that in my career I've had the privilege at MUM of being the architect for. And here are some planned improvements to some buildings and grounds that I have designed for Maharshi University of Management. And what is the importance of living or working in Vastu? And the importance is that, and here's a picture of a few houses in a large community of Vastu homes near me in Iowa. The importance of living in a Vastu community is that when you live in a community in which all of the buildings are coherent, then there is a greater effect of coherence broadcast throughout the entire community, a kind of a field effect. We see in nature certain cases where if the elements of a structure become aligned with each other, become coherent, and the structure resists negative outside influences. And the same thing happens in a Vastu community. And we built many now in the United States and around the world. And these are photos of a few of them. And here is a large pundit campus we built in the United States. Here is a campus we built in West Virginia. Here is, we'll show you now some photos of a Maharishi Vastu community in England. And what people find when they live in Vastu communities is even more so than living in a single Vastu home. People find peace, they find security, they find that they feel more at home in their home than they ever have felt in a home before. And Maharshi said to us, and here's a small Vastu community in New Zealand, they're all over the world. Here, one in North Carolina. Maharshi said to us that, and here's, we're going to see a few photos of the houses in North Carolina in that Vastu community. He said that if you live in a Vastu community, because of this protective field influence of coherence, that the community itself becomes even invincible. Invincible. It repels negative outside influences. And we're looking at some of the houses in this Vastu community in North Carolina, where life is very, very sweet. A Vastu house is always surrounded by a fence or a wall. This is a beautiful wall, but usually they're simple fences. And it always has its entrance to the east, sometimes also to the north. And this increases the alignment with natural law, with that orientation to the east, which is the direction of natural law on the surface of the earth. And here's a master plan of a Vastu community that is getting underway soon in Florida. And here are some of the spec houses that are planned for this Vastu community in Florida, some of which have already been built. So I've described to you how an ideal city has this influence of invincibility. And this is not just superstition. This appears to be very real. This is a photograph of a house, and we see in the foreground burnt trees, a forest that has burnt to the ground. And this is in San Diego County, eastern San Diego County, where there were two horrible, huge brush fires in the past decade, both times that destroyed hundreds of houses. One of the Maharishi Vastu communities in North America was at the epicenter of this fire. And both times, the flames went right around the Maharishi Vastu houses and didn't even damage their fences, while all around them there was untold damage. And we have many more examples of this. Just in February of this very year, here in Iowa, where I live, in a Vastu community, next to it there was a brush fire that got out of control, and the wind sent it towards this Vastu community. And the fire departments from 3 neighboring communities all came out to try to keep the flames away from the houses. They had quite a bit of success in the area of the village where there was a wide road and some mowed land that separated the houses from the fire. But as the fire got to the end of the village, there was no road and there was no longer that mowed area. And it looked like the flames were going to jump and burn down these houses that we see in the lower right, when suddenly, just as happened in that fire in both times in the fires in San Diego County, the wind changed direction. It bypassed the Vastu houses, and then it returned to the original direction. Now, we do not have a scientific explanation for events such as this, and they sound like magic. They sound completely unbelievable. And I certainly cannot demonstrate to you what the scientific laws are that have caused these things to happen. We have to regard them just as anecdotes. Please don't think of them as any more than that until it is examined by science and the methods whereby groups of Vastu structures have been shown to create an influence of harmony and coherence in an environment. But in the meantime, we have now so many examples of this happening that we can really consider that this might be real and that there really is some nourishing, protective benefit that comes to us of living in a community of Vastu homes. And so here's a map of the 5 boroughs of New York showing a few areas where there are streets that are on the grid, streets that really run due north, south, east, west. And if someone wants to live in one of the 5 boroughs, they can be in touch with us, and we can show them where the neighborhoods are, where they can buy a lot that's on the grid. Now, of course, the 5 boroughs are almost completely built out, and it would be necessary to tear down an existing house, which would mean hundreds of thousands of dollars just to have a buildable lot. And that's beyond the means of most people. So what we are more likely to do is to build for our friends in New Jersey in areas that are not yet fully developed, but in communities, in townships that have really, really good schools, very high scoring schools, and that we will be able to build for them in these communities, Vastu communities from scratch, new Vastu communities, in which they will be able to have a home for themselves, which is a Vastu home. And excuse me one second, Ron, I want to make reference to some notes that you put together for me this afternoon. And do you remember the name of that email? Let's see, I'm looking for it now. Yeah, why don't you do that? I want to share with you who are connected with us the locations that we are looking at to build Maharishi Vastu homes in New Jersey, because we found some good parcels of land. We have a great developer. He is an Indo-American. He's been a civil engineer for many years, and he is looking forward to doing Vastu developments now and in New Jersey. And the communities that we have identified some lots in are in Somerset Township and let's see, where else? Ron, I'm not seeing the names. We're looking as far south as Hopewell, Monroe, and Marlborough. We have a lot in Bridgewater that has 7 lots on it. In one township, which I know I'm not going to pronounce correctly, and I apologize, Manalapan, we have found a parcel that has several approved lots. The owner is a builder and is pricing out doing the infrastructure. And we have identified some larger parcels also in New Jersey that we are looking forward to purchasing and subdividing. And in each case, we're looking for lots in townships that have really good schools, a rating of at least 8, in some cases 9, some cases 10. And so if you are seriously interested in now or sometime in the future, here's one parcel in Hopewell that we're looking at, in being a part of one of these Vastu communities, then just let us know. Just be in touch with us. Click on the link at the bottom of the email, at the bottom of this screen, and let us know your contact information. We will not share your contact information with anyone else. We'll use it only for communicating with you and answering your questions, and maybe sending you our e-zine every 3 or 4 months so that you're up to date on what the development projects are. And if you want more information, in addition, feel free to go to our website, maharishivastu.org, which you see on the screen. We have a great deal of information on it. And if you did not register for this webinar, feel free to send us an email at info@maharishivastu.org, info@maharishivastu.org, to be involved and informed. Or else just click on the link at the bottom of this. And Ron, do we have a collection of any questions to answer? Okay, so let's see what else that we can do for you. We look forward working with our developer, with our architect in New Jersey, and in the boroughs of New York to see how quickly we can build a Maharishi Vastu community for you, perhaps on one of the parcels that we have identified in these communities. We could do some of these are appropriate for single family houses. Other people want to live in townhouses. And some people want to live near a Hindu temple. And so we have designs of townhouses. And we are looking forward to building also a community of townhouses in a part of New Jersey with reasonable price points. Feel free to let us know what you want, and we will look forward to working with you. And until we talk again, it's been a great pleasure connecting with you. And we look forward to helping the citizens of New Jersey to be able to move into Vastu and have these benefits, which are now tested by science and tested by medicine and shown to be not just a memory, not just a wish, not just a superstition, but real and the heritage of India, the land of the Ved, and for the benefit of people all over the world. And so we look forward to helping you, and Jai Gurudev.